Shalom, family. Welcome to today. This week's Torah portion is Vay'chi, and it means "and he lived." It's Genesis 47:28 through 50:26, and this is actually the last parsha in Genesis, the last Torah portion in Genesis. In this section, we read how Jacob has 17 years in Egypt, and as he gets ill, he requests for his burial to be with his fathers. Before he dies, he adopts Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, with his younger son getting the bigger blessing. Jacob's final words for each tribe, we get that in this parsha. We have Judah's position of praise. We have Jacob's death, burial in Canaan. We have the brothers fearing Joseph again, and Joseph reassures them. Then we have Joseph's death at 110, declaring that God will bring them out again, and they must carry his bones back to rest in the land. A verse from this week's Torah portion that I want to focus on is found at Genesis 50, verse 19 through 21. It says, "But Joseph said to them, 'Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then, don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children.' And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them." So this makes me think about how God works in mysterious ways, and one of the ways that mystifies me the most about his ways is how God works through people's sins. We see it all throughout New Testament and Old Testament. I see it in my life, how God has worked through my sins and how he has worked through the sins of those who have hurt me. God doesn't tempt us. He wants us to choose him. He wants us to be obedient to him, but he knows when we will sin. And he already has a plan to use our disobedience for good and for his glory. The greatest example of this is, of course, Jesus on the cross. It wasn't the Jews that put Jesus on the cross. It wasn't Rome, and it wasn't Judas's fault. It was me. I put Jesus on the cross. You put Jesus on the cross. It's Adam and Eve. It's every human that's ever lived and every sin we've ever committed that put Jesus on that cross. We all have our selfish and evil desires to blame for Yeshua's death. But he tells us, "Do not fear. I am God. You plotted evil against me, but I turned it into good in order to preserve the lives of many people who are alive today because of what happened. You have nothing to fear. I will take care of you and your children." And it's his reassurance and it's his word that has touched our hearts. Jesus did all of that on the cross, and he still does all of that every day. My prayer today is you find a verse in scripture that moves you the way this scripture has moved me. It's also, as we enter Sabbath, I pray you have a blessed and restful Shabbat. I love you all. Shabbat Shalom.